There's a lesson that keeps resurfacing every time you explore Depression-era survival. When money disappears, creativity explodes. In the early 1930s, millions of families suddenly had to make do without buying anything new. Not clothes, not tools, and certainly not knives. A good blade wasn't optional back then. It was essential for farm work, kitchen tasks, repairs, gardening, trapping, cutting rope, shaving wood, cleaning game, literally everything. But if a knife dulled, chipped, or snapped, most households couldn't afford a replacement. Hardware stores were distant, supplies were limited, and cash was almost non-existent. Out of that pressure, out of pure necessity, came one of the most brilliant and overlooked survival hacks of the entire era. The improvised razor edge cutting tool made from scrap steel, worn-out equipment, and discarded farm metal. And, strangely enough, for many rural families, this homemade blade didn't just fill in for a missing knife. It outperformed the factory-made versions for many daily tasks and lasted far longer with almost no maintenance. What makes this story more than just an interesting bit of historical trivia is the lesson buried inside it. The best survival tools don't always come from catalogs, brand names, or high-end gear. They come from understanding materials, adapting on the fly, and using what's already in your environment. Once you understand this Depression-era method, you gain a backup cutting tool you can make in less than an hour. No forge, no heat treatment, no specialized equipment, just scrap metal, a file, a hammer, and the willingness to work with what you have. The Great Depression created the perfect environment for this skill to flourish. Families needed cutting tools immediately, but money, transportation, and new goods were all scarce. What they did have, however, was a backyard full of old metal. Steel was precious, and nothing was ever thrown away. Broken wagons, rusted stoves, chipped tools, worn-out hay rakes, carriage hardware, and snapped handsaws piled up behind barns and sheds. Most people today would see useless junk. Depression-era families saw opportunity. Many of these discarded parts contained high carbon, still exactly the type needed for a durable cutting edge. And the genius of their approach was simple. They didn't melt it, forge it, or heat treat it. They simply picked metal that was already hardened, already tempered by years of use. It was stiff enough to keep an edge, but soft enough to shape by hand. Among all the improvisations of the era, one stands out as the most iconic and the most effective: the handsaw blade conversion. Broken handsaws were everywhere during the 1930s, when the teeth wore down or snapped. Factories considered the entire saw worthless, but rural families knew better. Old saw steel is thin, flexible, high in carbon, easy to sharpen, and naturally capable of taking a razor edge. People cut out sections of the blade, hammered them flat if needed, and shaped them into slight curves or straight profiles, depending on the kind of work they expected to do. A simple cord wrap or two, wooden scales wired or nailed in place, became the handle. In a matter of minutes, a useless scrap became a thin, wickedly sharp slicing tool. What made these improvised knives so remarkable wasn't just their simplicity, it was their performance. Modern outdoor knives tend to be thick and heavy, designed for durability and batoning. Depression-era blades were incredibly thin, which allowed them to glide through food, carve wood with precision, trim saplings, slice rope, and process game with almost no resistance. That thin geometry, ironically, is something modern knife companies now charge premium prices for. Depression-era families had it for free. Even sharpening was easy. A few strokes with a mill file produced a shaving edge. A few more produced a razor. Kids learned to sharpen these blades without any fear of ruining them. The handsaw blade was the star of the show, but it wasn't the only metal repurposed. Old-timers figured out exactly which scrap metals worked best for which tasks. Hay rake tines made exceptionally narrow, strong carving tools. Broken chisels became thick, heavy-duty bush knives. Coal shovel edges turned into versatile utility blades. Even cracked kitchen knives were reshaped and given years of new life. One of the most underrated Depression-era hacks was the wagon wheel band blade. When an old wooden wheel broke, the steel band that wrapped around it became free. It already had a natural curved arc. Sharpening the inside of that curve created a powerful two-handed slicing tool, a homemade drac knife capable of processing meat, shaving wood, shaping tool handles, or scraping hides with incredible control. All of this matters today because the principle has never changed. The best emergency blade is the one you can make from common scrap without specialized tools. Knives break, rust, get lost, or dull at the worst possible time. Ferro rods get misplaced, lighters die, and gear disappears. But scrap steel is everywhere. If you know how to convert it into a knife, you're never unprepared. That is the mindset Depression-era families lived by, and it's exactly the mindset survivalists try to cultivate today. To understand the practicality of the method, you only need to try it once. Start with a piece of thin, springy Stellan old handsaw segment is ideal. Lay it flat on a stump or anvil-like surface. Tap lightly to remove bends. Cut the blade profile using snips or a grinder if you have one. Wrap the end in cord or attach simple wooden scales with nails or wire. Then sharpen it. Hold a consistent angle. Apply a mill file until a burr forms. Flip the blade and repeat. Finish with a sharpening stone, and suddenly you're holding a razor-sharp cutting tool made from material most people would throw away. For outdoor work, you can even leave both ends wide enough to grip, forming a two-handed draw blade that handles wood shaping, sapling trimming, feather stick carving, or hide processing with impressive power and control. Everything about the Depression-era blade hack is fast, resourceful, and incredibly practical. It deserves a place in every survivalist's knowledge bank because it guarantees a blade even when gear fails. Tools must be repairable or replaceable using materials already on hand. That simple truth carried families through the hardest years of the Great Depression, and it still applies today. If you can turn scrap steel into a dependable cutting tool within an hour, you're never without a blade. And that single ability, simple as it is, can make a world of difference in bushcraft, off-grid living, or emergency situations. This forgotten technique ties you directly to the ingenuity of past generations, people who survived and thrived with a fraction of the tools we take for granted today. And if you want more historically grounded fieldcraft and practical survival knowledge, subscribe to Forgotten Survival and share this guide so others can rediscover the resourcefulness our ancestors depended on every single day.